And you fish out of a couple different ports. Tell us about a little bit about your charter.
So we start in the spring. We start at St. Catharines Marina. We'll be there from April to the end of May. That is 200 Broadway Street. If anybody curious, people mix that up a lot with Port Dalhousie. So you usually got to make sure it's St. Cat's Marina, Broadway Street there. And then we move over to our home port at Bronte Outer Harbor. And then we go from there from May to the end of September, mid-September, depending on the weather. Like last year, September is a pretty good month, except the last couple of weeks where the winds were pretty high from the east. And that pretty much makes the water muddy and goodbye season.
Sergio, tell me a little bit. So you fish out of two different harbors. You fish out of Bronte, and then you fish out of
St. Cat's Marina.
St. Cat's first, and then up to Bronte.
Yep.
Tell me the differences. Why do you make that move?
So as you know, the south side is always going to be the hottest in the spring.
That's St. Cat's.
Yeah, you got St. Cat's there, the nice green water, beautiful silver kings are there. You got rainbows there. It's a great start. As the migration starts, they start to go east. They make their circle around east. So then by June is a pretty good month there, Bronte. We have a lot of rainbows. You start to see the smaller shakers and cohos, things like that. Not a problem. July, August, we got the Bronte Creek there. So you got the big stagers. You want to play with big boys. It's July, August is the month to be at Bronte. That's where you want to be. That is a prime location.
So a lot of the guys that we've had on this week fish out of Wilson or maybe Olcott, and they're kind of on the to the east of that Niagara flow. So when that Niagara flow comes out there, does it turn to the west as well to St. Cat's the same way, or is it very different?
It really depends. Okay. Some years you'll check out Modest, the satellite imagery. You'll see it go straight east, straight west. You'll see it split sometimes. It really depends on the winds and the currents. As you saw this winter, we didn't really have a real winter. It's pretty mild throughout the whole season this year. So it's really hard to predict. I think, though, that this year we're going to have a good class of fish, regardless of how things turn out this year. I see it really big. Because if you look the last couple of years, for example, the Great Ontario Salmon Derby, you're starting to see those numbers push up into the higher 30s, and that's a good sign to see.
Yeah.
The last 2-3 years, if guys are out there fishing, you'd see a big increase in shakers. That's a really good class of fish to see that within 2-3 years, you're going to have a good mature king. And like I said, it's going to be a great turnout this year. I can just see it.
Yeah, it's kind of the strange thing. It's, I live in northern Minnesota, and for our fish to get big in Minnesota, they have to get old. And when you start talking about salmon fishing, you're like, yeah, it's a 3-year-old. It's fully mature, and it's just funny the life cycle of those fish.
It is,
and how fast they grow. And you're like, this is a year class. We've got all these shakers this year, so in 2 years we're gonna have some mega fish out there. Just
I better
crazy.
Believe it.
Even when you think about comparing it to a lake trout, that again takes many years to mature. Just how fast these salmon put the weight on.
Phenomenal fish. They're powerful, beautiful fish to look at when they're silver. You catch the odd one in the fall tuxedo, they look great as well. Like you never understand the science behind those kings. They're phenomenal.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that early season fishing out of St. Cat's.
Yeah.
What are you doing there? What are kind of your bread and butter plays?
My bread and butter plays for me is I love my big planer boards out with some yalleye cranks. Gotta love those out there. Some beautiful spoons. Mixed veggies is a great one. Your smaller flies for cohos up top once again on your weighted steel, things like that. The simpler stuff will start getting kings right away. You go with lead core, weighted steel in the spring there with your big boards or even your small offshore boards, inline boards, you're going to produce fish, hands down, not a problem. Long lines, green water there. As soon as you find that green water, start setting up your gear. You're going to be on them in no time.
So it sounds like you're really targeting the entire water column there.
Yeah. So as you're chartering, you want to keep those rods moving while start targeting the bigger fish as well, right? So you want to run a multi-class spread just to keep things going, keep everybody enticed, keep everybody happy.
And how is that different than, maybe if you're tournament fishing when you're out fishing with a charter?
So for tournament fishing, we're going to be running things really down low and tight. We're not too worried about what's happening on the top of the water column. Because as you know, those big kings, they're going to be down deep. That's why they call them cold water kings, right? But it also depends, too, which time of the year you're doing the tournament, because these kings might be coming up high. And that's where the fish hawk comes into play and tells you, hey, 44 degrees is up here, 44 degrees is down there. So you kind of got to play with your equipment on your boat and see where you want to be for the big kings. You know they're going to come out of their temperatures to feed, but they're going to go back down. So you know that your big kings are always going to be down deep.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about when you're doing this in the spring. What are the kind of temperatures you're looking for? What are some, when you get out to somewhere, you go, all right, this is the spot. What are you looking for?
As long as I'm starting around the 40s mark, I'll start spreading my gear on the 40s. I look for the green water as well. And around the 40s, you're going to start seeing activity. You're going to start seeing fish there. And it's like, do they want a fast troll? Do they want a slow troll? You're not really 100% sure what's happening at that time. So that's why you want to have your multi-rod set up and work your program from there.
So you make that move from St. Cat's up to Bronte, and when does that, I mean, you do that by calendar, or you do that kind of by feel as the things happen?
By feel and by calendar as well, because I want to go back to my home ground, start pre-fishing, seeing how things are. Every year, fishing's different, locations are different. So it's nice to get back there a week or two before my charters on that side of the lake start, just to see what's happening there. So you're not going out there with no information, nothing that's going to surprise you. You need to be ready what's going on out there on that side.
The Bronte is kind of halfway between Hamilton, which, if you don't know the area, it's basically kind of like the crack.
The little funnel, funnel there.
Where Lake Ontario kind of points out, in Toronto. You're basically halfway between that Hamilton and Toronto.
Yeah, so goes Hamilton, Oakville, and then you have Mississauga, which is Port Credit, and then you're up to the Toronto, which is your Bluffers and Ashbridges that everybody knows about. Yeah.
Tell me about the structure and what it's like to fish around Bronte.
Bronte's great because as soon as you leave, for example, at a fisherman's pier, you can pretty much start fishing right away. The water drops pretty quick. It's more of a mud composition over there. So everybody knows that if you start going in shallow, coming in, doing the weave, you're going to hit fish because they love to bury the mud, especially when it comes to stager season. They're going to go nice down low on that mud. So you run those lines like your 80s, 90s, 40s, 100s, you're going to catch a good king on that side.
So you're getting out there in late spring, early summer. What's the program like that time of year?
So when I start going over to Bronte, now I'm going to bring out the spin doctors with the good flies. I'm going to start running meats, MC rockets. I'm going to start running the bigger spoons, because the bigger spoons, for example, I use a lot of triple threats. So I'm going to be using the triple threat spoons on my spread. And then start basically introducing your big fish program, because you know it's time to play with those guys there.
You said your good flies. Tell me what your good flies are.
My
People want to know.
People want to know, eh? So I'm a big Mirage guy.
Okay.
I use a lot of my products from GRC, which the booth is just around the corner there. You guys get Mirage flies. He's got his glow flies with the E-chip for a lot of you guys that use Pro Troll flashers. Pat has actually flies now for the last 2 years that have the E-chip technology in it. And let me tell you, some days they work phenomenal. And like I said, I'm a big fan of using Mirages, glows. If it's going to glow, it's going to go. I can't forget that riddle, right?
Right.
I like my dark greens as well. Like green's a phenomenal color on that side. You can't go wrong with blue. You want to catch some rainbows up high. You want to use orange flies, which Pat produces as well. A lot of spoons that people know is the mixed veggie. Pat has now started making mixed veggie, custom painted meat rigs. It's been working great. We had those on trial last year, and it did really, really well.
Tell me, you said the E-chip. What is that all about?
So the E-chip is something developed by Pro Troll that emits a little bit of electricity in the water, like a little combination of voltage, and imitates a cloud of bait fish, which then the salmon sensory feels that in the water, and they come in for striking thinking it's bait.
Interesting. So tell me a little bit more about GRC trolling flies. I know that's a company that you work with pretty closely. How did they get started?
So Pat used to be a truck driver. He started hand tying stuff on the side. Slowly from hand tying, he started making an online web store, which is grctrollingflies.com. Started having a little combination there. Within the last few years, he's got a big product line. He works with a lot of tack shops, like everybody knows Sonny's. On the American side. On the Canadian side, you usually find them at Angling Outfitters in Woodstock, which is one of my great stores that I like going to. You'll find... what else are you going to find? You're going to find that he started making a lot of his own custom meat heads as well. So he's got his own style of meat head that don't require no tuning. He's got nice chrome ones that if you bend, the chrome doesn't crack or flake off like the older days. You know, times change, technology's changed. Things come a long way for fishing.
Yeah. Tell me about kind of you talked a little bit about your favorite flies with Bronte, but what are some of the flies there at GRC as people are walking around the show here this weekend? What are the hot sellers? What are people going
The
after?
hot sellers have been the 6-inch Mirage Glow, which actually we sold out of them within the first couple of hours in the morning. The 6-inch fly, Pat makes the Magnum size flies. They are phenomenal for stagers. That really gets them going on his spin doctor on the aggressive setting because it whips it pretty hard. So they come out an aggressive bite. The other one that's really hot is the Captain Crush. So it's like a green tinge with some clear and black dots. That's a phenomenal paddle as well, or not paddle, fly. I'm getting all excited talking about all these colors. I'm all over the place.
So obviously that Mirage, if it sold out that quickly, people came in here looking for it. What is it about that fly that makes it great?
It's the way that Pat made a combination of the glow and he made it UV, so it's the best of both worlds. So in the morning it's going to glow, sun's out, it's going to be shining through the UV in the water column. Like, you can't go wrong with that. And the other benefit too of running flies is you don't have to be as proactive checking the meat. How many times have you gone fishing and you're like, oh shoot, the meat fell out of my meat rig because you don't know it ripped. You had a bad strip. Everybody has a bad strip here and there. It happens, right? Poor brining. It's been used a couple times. It breaks. Now you're seeing streakers on your sonar and you're like, what's going on? And if some guys are very proactive in bringing their gear up to check if the meat is still there, some guys don't. Like I was just in Cuba a month ago. Great guys to fish with. Great guys. But we were trolling. We ended up going on an 8-hour trip, and they didn't check their bait probably like 3.5 hours in. He brought everything in, and none of it had the meat on anymore. And we're like, you know, that's a big thing with running meat.
Yep.
As opposed to a body bait. Yeah, I'll probably snag something on the water, but meat's very important. You have to stay on top and check it. You have to.
So when you're running meat, how often are you checking?
I usually check mine every half an hour, 45 minutes, and sometimes sooner. If I'm seeing too many streakers and I know it's one of my trusted rigs that I use all the time and it's not hitting, I'm definitely going to pull it in and see if I caught some weeds. You know, what happens after a windy day from the east blow, or did I have a bad strip? Which, like I said, everybody has a bad strip. It happens, right? So those are my telltales right there, is streakers, and I'd say every half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm going to check it right away.
We were talking about flies earlier. What's kind of your favorite paddle to run with the flies that you're running?
I love the White Lightning I'm a big Spin Doctor fan, for starters. I love the Spin Doctors, but I also like the new stuff that came to the market a couple years ago, Triple Threat, another Canadian source. They have the fish style OK paddles, and they use Hypervis tape. It has a great glow to it. Honestly, we haven't seen too many of it, but it's going to be a big thing. Their colors that they use with the Hypervis on Triple Threat's products has a bright, vibrant color. They got great glow patterns. So I like to use a paddle that has a good whip to the fly. Like, I want to keep that fly active. But sometimes being aggressive on your presentation isn't always the key. Sometimes they want a stealth presentation. So that's when I like to switch over to my Spin Doctors, because you can move the pin over on the back of the paddle and have more of a stealthy presentation with not such a strong whip and a roll. So those are the things you got to watch out for.
If people are kind of first trying to get into the paddle and fly thing, how do they know, okay, this one's more aggressive, this one's a little more subtle look? Is there a way to check that when they're dropping things down and taking a look at it?
What they could do if they want, to starters, that way you never make a mistake, is put it down a foot and a half, hold your rod in the water there, your troll speed. You're going to be able to see if your fly is whipping really hard, if the paddle's pulling really hard. Those are going to be your telltale signs to tell you exactly what kind of presentation you want. And that's usually tell clients who come out with me like, hey, what do you know you're going to use today? So I generally use the stuff the trip before that I know was working, but I'll never put out all aggressive or all stealth. I'm going to have a combination of both on the other side of the boat. Sometimes I'll mix them on the side because, as you know, you always have different currents on the different sides of the boat. So sometimes the stealth is firing, you turn around, the aggressive is going to fire. That doesn't help you. So I like to mix it around because you want the fish to tell you what they want so you know what you're going to present to them.
Very cool. So we've been talking to a lot of captains here this weekend, and a lot of them are guys that either have gray hair or no hair on top of their head.
I think I got lucky.
You got plenty of hair. It's dark and lustrous. You're a young man. Tell me a little bit about, it's great to have these guys that come in, and we had Bob Songen and Vince Pirlioni on, and those guys are both putting in their 40th season, and it's fun to talk to those guys and be around those guys. But being a young captain like yourself, tell me just a little bit about what that's like to be out there, and obviously a little bit different experience than what some of those other guys are looking at right now.
It's pretty funny, actually. So in my first year chartering, I was going out to meet my clients at our meetup spot, and they're like, "Oh, we're looking for Captain Sergio." And I'm like, "Hey guys, great to meet you." And they're like, "You're the captain?" Yeah. I'm like, they're like, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the captain." So they get talking and stuff like that. We go fishing, and they're looking at me like, "Does this guy really know what he's doing?"
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up fishing a lot, so I always tell people, when you go out fishing with your grandparents or friends that have been doing this for years, put your phones down and just watch, just learn, just observe it all. And if you're the type of person that wants to learn and you ask people the right questions, they will teach you. Like, I've always been a big fan that if people grab the sport and they all work together and the sport grows, it's great for everybody. So maybe you're not doing very well with me, but the next guy, you're having a great trip. I'm glad. Like, it has to be a sport where everybody teams up because it's better for the economy. It's better for the fish. It helps stimulate the economy in many ways. Things like that, right?
Yeah.